Where the moonlight bends, the forbidden dream letters of Aurelius and Celine. Episode 1. The city of marble and shadow. In the 12th year of Chancellor Varen's reign, the city of Lyria lay upon the curve of the river like a silver brooch clasped at the hem of the hills. Its towers gleamed white in the daylight, but at dusk the marble took on a strange shadowed hue, as though it remembered older shapes, older names. The streets were narrow where the merchants sang their prices in a dozen tongues. Candlemakers, spice sellers, and gold-leaf gilders crowded the air with scents of beeswax, cinnamon, and metal. Above all, at the heart of the scholars' quarter, rose the Hall of Philosophy, a domed hall where voices echoed for seconds after the words were spoken, as though the air itself lingered to think. It was here that Aurelius first began to teach. No one quite agreed on how old he was. Some swore he was hardly past his 29th year. Others, that his eyes carried the weariness of a man twice that age. He spoke with the precision of a blade being drawn, clean, deliberate, without hesitation. And yet when he lectured, it was not the sharpness but the warmth that drew his students close. He could speak of the movements of the stars as though they were prayers, and of mathematics as though it were a secret song. On the first day of autumn, as the air in Lyria grew cool enough to bite, Celine entered the hall. She was the daughter of Albrecht of the Royal Archives, a historian whose duties kept him at the Chancellor's court, and she had been educated in the safety of her father's study. She had read the histories of nations, the laws of the realm, the writings of saints and skeptics, and yet her heart was restless. Aurelius spoke that morning on the nature of truth, asking whether it was born from memory, from reason, or from divine order. Celine listened from the farthest bench, a hood over her hair, and yet her gaze never left him. She did not take notes. When the lecture ended, she lingered by one of the high arched windows, and when Aurelius passed, she spoke without courtesy or preamble. If truth is memory, then what are the memories we have never lived? Are they false, or do they belong to some part of us that came before we were born? Aurelius stopped as though she had struck him. "What is your name?" She told him. He regarded her for a moment, as if trying to see beyond her face. "Then you have asked a question to which no safe answer exists. I will give you one anyway, but not here." That night, Celine found a folded slip of parchment upon her writing desk. No seal, no hand to deliver it, only her name on the outside, in a script she had seen only once, hours earlier. Episode 2.
A correspondence begins.
The slip of parchment contained but one line. "Meet me tomorrow in the courtyard beneath the sundial, when the shadow touches the mark of the equinox." Celine did not know how the message had reached her, but she came. The sundial stood in a cloistered courtyard at the Hall of Philosophy, ringed by carved columns worn smooth by centuries of wind. Aurelius was waiting with 2 cups of spice wine. They spoke for an hour, not of personal matters, but of ideas. He asked her if she believed the soul could be measured. She asked him whether time was a river that carried us, or a rope we climbed in either direction. Before they parted, he asked permission to send her a question in writing. She agreed, though she could not say why her heart beat harder at the thought. The next morning, a letter was waiting at her chamber door. It was brief, only 2 paragraphs, but the writing was dense and alive. His hand moved like a mapmaker's, shaping each letter with precision. He asked her whether beauty was a property of the world or only a mirror of the heart. She replied at once. In the weeks that followed, their letters multiplied. At first, they traded thoughts as duelists trade blows, measured deliberate, striking from unexpected angles. But soon their words began to wander into places philosophy did not reach. She wrote to him of the ache she felt when the first star appeared above the rooftops. He wrote to her standing on the hall's roof at night, imagining the river below as a silver road to places unnamed. Then, one morning in late autumn, she opened a letter that should have been ordinary, yet it was damp. Not stained, not spotted by accident, but damp as though it had just been drawn from the mist. The scent of rain rose from the parchment, clean and cool, though the skies above Lyria had been clear for days. Her reply mentioned it only in passing. Your paper was wet, and the ink smelled of rain. I do not think I mind, but I wonder how you managed it. Aurelius's next letter contained no answer, but when she unfolded it, the faintest reflection of a crescent moon shimmered in the white space between the lines, a reflection that shifted when she moved the page, as though it floated on unseen water. That night, Celine dreamed she stood beside a river she did not know, the moonlight bending on its surface like molten silver. Someone stood across from her on the far bank, watching, but she could not make out his face. When she woke, there was another letter on her desk. No seal, no footsteps in the hall. Episode 3. The Luminous Thread. The new letter began without greeting. If you dreamed last night of water, I was there. Celine stared at the line for a long time before reading the rest. Aurelius described the very curve of the riverbank she had seen, the slant of the moonlight, even the moment she had turned toward the figure on the far shore, and though he did not say it outright, she knew he meant himself. From that night forward, their letters began to carry more than ink. In one, Aurelius sent a faint taste of salt on the wind, though she was miles from the sea. In another, she sent the sound of distant bells that rang for a few moments after the page was opened. They learned to pack sensations into their words, tucking them between the lines where the parchment seemed to hum faintly to the touch. Sometimes the letters arrived in impossible ways. A folded sheet might slip from the sleeve of her robe, though she had never placed it there, or appear under Aurelius's hand as he reached for his quill. Once, she found a note floating in her wash basin, the ink dry, the page warm. With each exchange, the dreams grew sharper. They began to meet in the Dream River landscape more often than by chance, speaking there as though it were a real place. She would wake with a memory of having touched his hand, warm, alive. Though in waking life, they had never so much as brushed fingers. But Lyria is a city of ears. A student in Aurelius's lectures noticed that he sometimes smiled as though recalling a private word. A servant in Celine's household found an unsealed letter and swore the paper smelled of the sea. Rumors traveled fast in the chancellor's court, where sorcery was less feared than unsanctioned truth. One evening, Celine's father summoned her to his study. His hands were clasped tightly behind his back. I am told you've been exchanging unconventional correspondence with Master Aurelius, he said without looking at her. They are only letters, she replied. Then why do people speak of bells that ring when your pages are opened? Why do they say you send him the scent of blooming linden in midwinter? These things invite questions. Celine, questions the chancellor does not like asked. That night, she wrote to Aurelius. We must be careful. They are watching. His reply came before dawn, placed gently on her pillow. The page smelled faintly of rain again, and beneath the ink, in letters only visible when she tilted toward the moonlight, was a single line. Then let them watch. The thread between us is older than their fear. Episode 4. Discovery and Condemnation. The Chancellor of Lyria was not a man to trouble himself with matters of love, unless they crossed into matters of order, and Aurelius and Celine's letters had, by now, become more than rumor. The turning point came not from a spy or an intercepted page, but from a moment of carelessness to one winter night. During a gathering of scholars, Aurelius read aloud a passage from an anonymous letter. It was meditation on the persistence of memory, written in words that shone with such intimacy that a few listeners blushed. It was only afterward, when the gathering had broken, that he realized the ink on the letter was still damp, and that it still smelled faintly of linden blossoms. By morning, whispers had spread across the scholars' quarter and into the chancellor's hall, that Aurelius had a correspondence not bound by messenger or seal, but by some ungoverned magic, that he and Celine met in dreams, that secret of the realm could pass between them unseen. The chancellor's council met in private. Some saw danger in the notion of letters that could carry not just words, but sensations, an untraceable courier for knowledge or rebellion. Others feared the moral contagion of such intimacy. One advisor, a rival of Aurelius's, fanned both flames. The sentence was delivered in the cold form of a decree. Asterisk Aurelius was to be exiled to Black Cliffs of Run, a fortress city where the sea clawed at the rocks and letters could not pass without inspection. Asterisk Celine was to be confined to the convent of Silent Archive, where the sisters swore vows never to speak or write to the world beyond. They were allowed one final meeting, not in private, but under the gaze of two guards in the Hall of Judgment. When Celine was brought in, Aurelius did not move to her at once. He looked at her as if memorizing not just her face, but the way her breath rose in the cold air. They were not permitted to touch. "Do you think they can stop us?" she asked quietly. "No," he said, "but they will try until it kills us." "Then let it." The guard stepped forward. Aurelius's eyes met hers for the last time in the waking world. And then he was led away toward the road to run, and she toward the iron gates of the convent. Thanks for watching. Come back tomorrow for the concluding part of the story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.